Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. It was early 2023 when the layoffs hit. My wife Sarah and I were both let go within weeks of each other. With bills piling up, I jumped at the first opportunity that came my way, a role at Hamilton Tech, even though it meant taking a step back in responsibilities. The job itself seemed promising enough, with Mike being an accommodating manager. The problem was his right-hand woman, Tina. From day one, she made my life a living hell. Tina would dump her workload on me, demanding I work through lunch breaks and evenings. Vacation requests were routinely denied, and she'd bombard me with calls and emails at all hours, even on weekends. But the insults were the worst part. Tina would make snide remarks about my weight, saying I was big for an Asian guy. The verbal jabs piled up until I had pages of documented offenses. I stuck it out purely for the paycheck, but the stress took its toll. One Friday afternoon, after Tina chewed me out over a minor scheduling mishap, I broke down. With a family emergency weighing on me, I finally confided in Mike about Tina's abusive behavior. Mike was understanding, having seen half of Tina's team quit due to her management style. He promptly moved me to another group under his supervision. Relief, however, was short-lived. Tina continued to meddle, harassing me from afar. Once she even stormed up to my desk, loudly proclaiming I was unfit for the role while Mike watched in disbelief. After 2 excruciating months, I'd had enough. I typed up my resignation, attaching the dossier of Tina's offenses, and hit send, CCing the entire company. Mike tried to negotiate, offering accommodations for me to stay, but I knew Tina's presence would persist. Her own manager overseas seemed indifferent to the numerous HR complaints against her. For 3 agonizing months, we scraped by on next to nothing. Some nights it was just bread for dinner so we could cover the mortgage and medical bills from Sarah's hospitalization. I must have applied to hundreds of jobs during that stretch. Then, out of the blue, an old colleague, Jared, landed a senior role at Hamilton Tech. We caught up, and I gave him the insider's take on the company's challenges. Jared was so impressed that he made me an offer I couldn't refuse, to join his team as chief of staff. Tina's jaw must have hit the floor when Jared introduced me during the first all-hands meeting after his arrival. There I was, sitting 2 levels above her after the mass exodus she had triggered. Staying classy, Tina immediately fired off a blistering email to Jared, trashing my competence and accusing me of lying to get ahead. Jared forwarded her email, asking for my side of the story. For an hour, I laid it all out. The harassment, the documentation, the resignation letter, and testimonies from Tina's former staff. Jared had seen enough. That Friday, he cut Tina loose for good. Karma has an interesting way of evening the odds, doesn't it? The next one is an entitled people story. I've lived on my family's land for as long as I can remember. My grandparents bought the sprawling property decades ago, and it's been passed down through the generations ever since. I always loved spending time here as a kid, riding horses, swimming in the creek, and playing in the rolling hills. Now as an adult, I've built my own house here and get to wake up to this beautiful scenery every morning. The land borders national forest on one side, giving it a remote, peaceful feeling while still being just a short drive to town. I've got 2 neighbors nearby who are great, friendly retirees who have always respected the property lines. Never had any issues until a new owner moved into the other neighboring plot last year, and that's when the trouble started. Her name was Karen, and she wasted no time letting everyone know she was going to be a nightmare neighbor. Soon as she moved in, she started complaining about any little thing she could find fault with. Didn't like the sound of my tractor tilling the soybean fields. Claimed my horses were too loud and their manure smell bothered her. Even had the audacity to say my house was an eyesore she shouldn't have to look at. I tried to be polite and brush off her constant criticisms at first. Figured she was just one of those perpetually unhappy folks that likes to make everything into an argument. But Karen took things too far when she started encroaching onto my property. First, it was just little things like throwing her trash into my bushes by the fence line. Annoying, sure, but I picked it up without saying much, not wanting to fan the flames. Then I started noticing her car parked halfway in my driveway when she was out walking her tiny yappy dog. I asked her to keep her car on her own property, but she shrugged it off like it was no big deal. The final straw came when I caught her literally remodeling the shed that was clearly on my side of the fence. I stormed over there and told her to get away from my shed and my land. But Karen stood firm, claiming that she had just as much right to the shed and surrounding area as I did. Said she wasn't going to stop her remodeling project and there was nothing I could do about it. Well, I wasn't about to let someone brazenly encroach and build on my family's land. I told Karen firmly that she had 10 minutes to gather her supplies and get off my property or I'd be calling the police. Of course she threw a fit, ranting about how unreasonable I was being and this land had no business belonging to me anyway. but my dialing finger was ready to call cops, and I think she could tell I meant business. With a dramatic huff, Karen gathered up her tools and supplies, all while muttering insults at me under her breath. I watched her stomp off my land and back to her house, fuming the whole time. Wasn't sure if this would be the end of it, but at least she was off my property for the moment. For a few weeks, things were quiet. Karen shot dirty looks my way, but didn't cause any direct issues. Then one day, I got a call from my county clerk's office saying they needed to discuss the paperwork filed about selling my land. I was understandably confused and went down to the clerk's office right away. That's when I discovered the unbelievable truth. Karen had forged documents and property transfer paperwork to make it look like I had sold her a portion of my land. She even forged my signature to make the sale look legitimate. I was absolutely stunned. This woman had illegally forged documents to literally steal land right out from under me. The clerk showed me the paperwork, and it was clearly a sloppy attempt at replicating my signature. Thankfully, the people at the clerk's office knew me and recognized something sketchy was going on. They wanted to track me down before filing the fraudulent property transfer. I wasted no time in contacting my lawyer and showing him the forged documents. He agreed we had an airtight case to prove this was all done illegally without my knowledge or consent. He helped me file documents contesting the sale and accusing Karen of fraud. A court date was quickly set up for us to present our case. Karen showed up looking smug, clearly not understanding the severity of what she had done. But that look quickly dropped when my lawyer presented our evidence and documentation proving the land sale was fraudulent. When prompted by the judge, Karen tried to continue spinning her web of lies. She stuck to her story that I had willingly sold her the portion of land and she had done nothing wrong. But the proof against her was overwhelming. Not only did she not have a legitimate signed contract from me, she didn't even have a plausible reason why I would randomly sell her a chunk of my family's sprawling farmland. In the end, the judge saw right through Karen's deceit. He voided the illegally filed land sale documents and upheld my lawful ownership of the entire property. Karen was found guilty of fraud and forgery of legal documents, but I wasn't done with this woman yet. On top of contesting the sale, my lawyer helped me file a civil lawsuit against Karen for damages resulting from her fraudulent scheme. She maliciously tried to steal my land, so it was only fair that she pay for the trouble she caused. After reviewing the costs I incurred from having to take time off work, meetings with my lawyer to gather evidence and fight the false land transfer claim, and emotional distress over the whole ordeal, the judge awarded me over $15,000 in damages. Let's just say Karen looked utterly shocked when she heard that ruling. I think the combination of having her underhanded plot exposed and foiled, plus getting slapped with a hefty financial penalty was the perfect justice. The judge also granted my request for a restraining order against Karen, just for good measure. I figured a little extra legal protection from this unhinged woman was a wise idea. Karen learned the hard way that you can't illegally try and snatch someone's property without consequences. Thanks to the ethics at my county clerk's office and my rapid legal response, I successfully reclaimed my land and recouped damages too. Don't mess with a man's livelihood and ancestral homestead, that's for sure. The next one is a petty revenge story. I was with my crappy husband for 10 years. We had a successful band together and toured all over for years. He asked an artist who had opened up for another certain famous artist in our genre to give us a good word and help us open for him on his next tour. My husband wanted that opportunity so bad as he thought the artist was Badass Ass Duck. The friend ended up opening for the Badass Ass Duck artist, so we didn't get the tour. He never knew we tried though and didn't know who we were as our name never got past the friend my husband asked to help us. We divorced a few years later and I started dating again. My husband was a piece of crap. One of, if not the worst people I've ever met in my life as far as how he takes advantage of people and ducks people over. One tiny example is he pawned my wedding dress and the 5 heirloom rings from grandmothers and great-grandmothers that were passed down to me. He's done even worse than that, but I won't get into it right now for the sake of getting to the point. Anyway, the Badass Ass Duck musician came into my town and had been on Bumble and matched with me. He didn't know I was part of the band from before. He took me out for a weekend, wined and dined me every day, drove me to the festival he was performing at all weekend, bought me gifts, spent the whole weekend with me and asked me to go with him on a resort vacation. Yes, I made sure my craphead ex-husband found out about all of that. I told him how amazing he was when he performed, how nice he was, what a great weekend we had together, how he's even greater in person, blah blah blah. It was so satisfying. The next one is a malicious compliance story. The superintendent of my old school was comically rigid in his views and seemed to have his mindset stuck in the 1960s. He told us without a hint of irony that the only way students would respect us is if we were dressed professionally. Not even business casual was okay for him. Faculty wearing sneakers or blue jeans was a legitimate cause for termination under our contract. The male staff dress code demanded that we wear a long-sleeve button-up shirt with a tie, dress pants with a belt, and dress shoes or boots every day. There was, however, a note in our contract stating that the dress code could be reasonably relaxed, if not possible due to a medical condition. No details were provided beyond that. Well, my wife and I moved apartments one weekend and my feet hurt, so I made the executive decision that that was a medical condition and wore my sneakers to school on Monday. I figured I could just lay low and keep my feet hidden from any pesky administrators, and I knew that my students wouldn't care. My students, in fact, thought it was awesome that part of my appearance was that of a real person, lol. Wouldn't you know it, that was the day the superintendent and building administrators were coming around room by room to give the school board members a building tour. So of course I had to get up and greet them. Nobody said anything to me, but I did receive a nasty email from the assistant principal, with CC to the principal and superintendent, reminding me of the expectations set forth in the teacher dress code. No note in my file or anything, just a warning. Fair enough, I suppose, but it pissed me off that they didn't even ask why I decided to wear sneakers and just sent me a warning with no chance to defend myself. So, cue the malicious compliance. If you noticed from my post title, the dress code just said dress shoes and boots. Well, are you familiar with Demonia boots? I went ahead and bought the most over-the-top, bombastic pair of boots on their website. I'm talking black leather with 3-in platforms, chains, studs, zippers, and straps galore. They came about halfway up my shins, and of course I tucked my pants into them. My students thought they were amazing, and there are pictures of my feet all over various social media sites. A few of my co-workers took it upon themselves to give me a stern warning, and some others gave me a high five. After 4 days of wearing these boots with no incident, the principal ended up behind me in the hallway. Rather quickly he asked, "What the hell are those?" So I told him they were boots to ensure that I am in compliance with the dress code, and kept walking. That afternoon, I received an email from him stating that I was intentionally being unprofessional and this would be documented in my record and further dress code offenses could lead to disciplinary action or suspension. I immediately got in touch with my union, who quickly dealt with that in my favor since they were indeed boots. I also explained to the union that I only did this because of the nasty email I received for wearing sneakers with my sore feet. The union rep immediately smirked, told me she was unfamiliar with that rule, and told me to go ahead and wear whatever footwear I wanted, and that if anybody had a problem, I could just claim I had sore feet. Long story short, I ended up wearing my sneakers every single day for the entire rest of the school year and never had another problem. My favorite part of this is that I inspired a few other rebels, and by the time I left that school, there were a solid 10 of us that were just routinely wearing sneakers or other non-dress code compliant footwear in blatant disregard of the dress code every single day. Good times, definitely a legacy that I left behind in that school. The next one is an entitled people's story. Buckle up, this is going to be a long reflection dump. My SO and I have been no contact with his family for a few years now, but I still get flashbacks of their antics, ESPCLs, so FYI these stories were from several years ago. 1. She wanted my SO to pay for her abortion because he apparently caused her pregnancy. Yes, you read that right. My SO graduated with a master's degree and got offered a top-notch job, so he invited everyone to his graduation and to celebrate after. His sister was 23 YO at the time, but to this day, she remains a high school dropout who refuses to go to college or make anything of herself except do drugs/parties/gym. She was incredibly distraught by the news of her brother's success and hated him getting any kind of attention. That she went missing for 2 weeks and returned pregnant, father unknown as she partied a lot. Her plus the parents wanted my SO to pay for the abortion because he did this to her. He refused, instead showing care as any brother should and referring her to an abortion clinic. Enraged by his refusal to pay, Syl had a tantrum and lashed out at their dog before driving off and damaging the car, then wanting him to pay for that too. They twisted the story to extended family friends, no mention of Syl's pregnancy and antics, just a generic smear campaign and pity party about my SO refusing to help his sister. And my SO received many angry confrontations saying he should be ashamed of himself for being so abusive towards his poor, innocent sister. His sister and a few others refused to attend his graduation. Soon after, my SO finally had the money to move out of home and go NC too. She expected everyone to fix and pay for her problems, then threatened to do things if she didn't get her way. The previous story wasn't a one-off. She was always in legal/financial/personal trouble. Whatever bizarre mess she got herself into, she'd have tantrums and threaten to run away if people didn't pay up and help. Sometimes her demands were degrading towards my SO, like when she vomits on the floor or destroys the toilet. She always managed to get gastro once a month. And if my SO didn't clean it up, he'd get scolded by everyone for not caring about the family. I was also guilted by MIL to be a helpful big sister to SIL, but no matter how much I helped, it was never enough, and SEL would play victim, no one helps me or loves me, etc. 3. She's an outright bully, e.g. At one family lunch, SIL fussed about the fact my SO gave me his sweet potato. He's not a fan. She started saying, "See, Mom? He's such a child. I'm a good girl and eat my sweet potato. Eat it. Now. You are wasting it." He reassuringly told her to relax and explained that I will eat it, but she retaliated with, "Don't you ducking tell me to ducking relax," and squashed the sweet potato in her bare hands and threw it across the dining room. She left, then marched back in demanding an apology and said, "If I do something bad after this, it's your fault," before running off and wailing. We left the event because MIL started scolding and berating my SO, and clearly we were no longer welcome. This enraged MIL plus SIL, as they both texted us demanding further apologies for upsetting Sil and leaving. Again, this wasn't a one-off thing. My SO would call his sister out on her abuse insults, then she'd run away crying, and Mill would step in and scold him, insisting his sister was trying to fix their sibling relationship, complete BS, and that he's the one that's ungrateful and uncooperative. 4. She would steal stuff and steal credit. Despite the fact she had an endless supply of nice stuff, my SO would still discover my things, perfume, lipstick, etc. in her bags and closet. She'd even help herself to things like his used razors because she couldn't be bothered to buy her own and he'd have to throw them out. When she was called out, she'd scream, kick, cry, etc. It was so bad he resorted to hiding and locking things away. Sile's also very ill-equipped for adulthood. She refuses to learn basic adult responsibilities, can't keep a basic job, etc. She doesn't even wash her hands or close the door when using the toilet. But to save face, she'd try take credit when my SO did chores. The parents would give over-the-top praise to her, plus money if she asked. But if my SO spoke up saying, "Actually, I did the work," they'd accuse him of stealing his sister's credit. When hosting social events, my SO would set everything up, cook, clean, etc. And I'd overhear Mill whisper to Sil, "Tell everyone you did it and not your brother, okay?" Just before NC, my SO stopped doing anything for his family, and they'd get mad because things went to shambles without him. Side note, the whole fam was entitled to my SO. SIL, Phil, and MIL have all had their fair share of inflicting damage on the family, and my SO fixed things by stepping up to compensate for their flaws. E.g., in my SO's childhood, MIL had many outbursts due to FIL's apparent laziness, incompetence, and even abandoned the family for a while, only deciding to return once my SO, as her young son became the provider, did most of the domestic labor, studied hard, etc. Obviously, this meant they all reacted really poorly once he moved out, got therapy for his trauma, and went NC. I have deep resentment for these kinds of entitled people. We are both so glad to be NC too. But how did they even end up this way? That question haunts me to this day. Ugh. The next one is an entitled parent story. We just had a fight with over the phone about what I posted on my private Instagram. Makeup is my favorite hobby, which I'd love to turn into a potential income later in life. I posted a reel with Amy Winehouse's Back to Black, which included a transition I came up with that involved a cigarette. Keep in mind that I don't even smoke a lot, a few cigarettes a day. She blew up on me for posting that, but that's not all. I have multicolored hair, green, blue, purple, many different shades, and she will periodically tell me that I don't look my age and that I should wear a natural color. Also always mentions she liked me the most when I was blonde, which is not my natural hair color, lol. She tells me I'm getting too old for unnatural hair color. She also comments on the way I dress, saying I look like I'm still in high school. I prefer streetwear style and alternative clothes. She also calls me if I post photos from hangouts with friends where I'm dressed inappropriately, but not because the outfits are revealing, but again because I should dress my age. Today, I told her I will block her on my social media because I can't stand her calling me about the things I post. And I told her to please find a therapist because I can't be her therapist, especially as a mentally ill person who is in outpatient treatment and therapy and takes a lot of meds to function normally. She always dumps everything that's bothering her on me. I just couldn't stand it anymore, especially because she called to complain about the Instagram reel after I spent 3 hours with my beloved puppy at the vet because she got very sick. She knew what was going on and I told her I'm under a lot of stress, but she just had to tell me. The thing is, she already told me yesterday when I posted it, but over a message. But that wasn't enough, and she had to call as well. I'm NC with everyone in my family except for her, but honestly considering going NC with her as well as soon as I become completely financially independent. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.